Hey everyone, RemanX here, and we're going to get right into my Ravager recommendations. Remember, I've been holding off on these because there's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of qualifiers in how this team's going to work and what they're really going to beat. We're going to go through a little bit after I make the talk about the team comp and really what I think they could beat. And the fact is, there are substitutable slots inside of the team. There are some pretty cool plug and play ways. You can see Dorky Dad's video that basically breaks down the Yondu cha-cha combo, and there's additional ways to make this team really shine. So where they are in the hierarchy is they probably can beat a lot more teams than you thought they could, but they do need a little bit of an investment. So we're going to start with the centerpiece. Obviously, Cha-Cha is kind of this anchor of the team. His power, he's quite powerful. The things that he provides in war with the extra 25% health on the T4 here are highly recommended. The rest of the T4s, remember, he doesn't do the 2 ability energy from the target unless you do the T4 on this. So this is something you're going to see is important. This is basically like a 2-turn ability block without having a chance to be cleansed. And you're going to see I have Striker on him. I think at 5 red star, 5-star G15, you can start considering him as Striker. The idea is to kind of understand the focus of your opponent. If they have D up, you have offense up, and understand how that works. So this is a really high theory craft character, but obviously the more power you put into him, the better this team will perform overall. And then we're going to talk about some of the necessities here. Now, I overdid it a little bit on my 7 red star Yondu. I do think his passive is super helpful. Because you can basically target a character with blind and steal all those additional effects. You have the additional powers of the summons, which are quite a bit more than they used to be. They have the rewind and the drain as part of a minion that is insane what they can do as far as control. But more importantly, this ability is going to be something when we talk about some of their counters and how they actually work. If you can get them to a second turn, they're very good against teams that can't be dodged. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal with the other team that got released this patch. We'll get into that in a few moments here. And then you've got so as far as like needed T4s, I do think that the passive is probably the only one that I go crazy about. The rest are kind of luxury. I do think that the more you can put him to, and the better off he is, because he does a decent amount of damage like he did when the game was launched. So Ravager Boomer. So heavy artillery is gets the always assist on the T4, and so remember, this is the non-minions. So I do like that, and I do like the fact that this has the extra speed rewind. You'll see this does play into a little bit in the video we have here, and we'll move on from that. So we'll talk about Stitcher. And I don't have any on Stitcher. I do think that there are some good ones on there. Obviously, the lower your health is, you can drop an extra 5%. I mean, he's not lacking in stats by any way, shape, or form. The Stitcher kit over here for the additional health steal is pretty powerful. The extra healing, the 10% is pretty powerful. But for me, it didn't seem like it was doing that much, considering with the war buffs, he's really getting that potential. This is something I might consider outside of it. Then we'll talk about the Disintegrator. Now, this is interesting, right? This damage on here is 100% piercing, and the Striker attack does the same thing. And so it has the potential to do insane amounts of damage and prevent characters from rezzing. So we'll have to stay tuned on whether this allows us to get into some other characters down the road, other comps down the road on war. So last piece of the puzzle is going to be Bruiser. Now, Bruiser's interesting because I think his basic, if you're going to be using him against Blackwater, is going to be essential, especially with teams against that have a protector on the team. Apply defense down plus disrupted. That is something that is definitely not understated. It does go in a certain order that would potentially protect them. So we're going to show that in the video because I think without that, he's going to get the specific against the Black Order counter. He's going to get the regens if you're not careful, and that may cause you to prevent being able to get through Cole, which is why some folks have reported losing on this team. The passive here, the Ravager with 25% armor is helpful, but the defense up to self and Ravager allies for 2 turns. In that counter, it's getting flipped anyway, so let's get into it. So I managed to record a video. It was a pretty big team. It's as big a team as I can see in comparable situation. I'm going to slow play it Because it's important because I don't want to trigger Thanos' speed up and then get to his ult too fast and then take a bunch of meteors to the dome. So we're gonna get right into it. So you're gonna see the power that this actually does have on. I'm gonna get rid of myself here. You're gonna see the power that it actually has when it hits when you start focusing Cole again. You're already a little behind with all those debuffs, but there it is. He's on spawn. He's clearing one of those debuffs. So we're gonna start right there and copy the adjacent buffs. Extend those buffs to the team. Now those are ghost buffs. You'll see that in a minute. This is the power of the team here. So those actually don't exist. Get the summons out. You'll see the summons actually do pretty decent damage. So we're going to use the basic here, and that's why we're going to go into the T4s in a minute. There's that disrupt, and then we're going to start using the highest amount of damage we can. We can probably take those off with a striker, but those heals allow me to kind of cover the tracks of the characters that are going to get retaliated and have a problem. So you can see right away that they're that we're keeping Yondu alive through that as a result. I mean, these guys are pretty large characters. So we're not going to use the special yet. We want to kind of get in on Thanos to prevent that from happening, so we're saving it. We probably could have done the ult here, but I'm a little concerned that if I do the ult, I'm going to speed him up too much. And that's the thing about this team is they actually do a lot of damage, kind of like Skilletary in that regard. A lot of front-loaded damage that could potentially spell disaster if you get characters below half health here. So I think the Stitcher, again, he's just going to do his job and absorb all the extra targets here, and then we're going to go ahead and just steal the energy, and then Thanos is going to kind of go out with a whimper here. And you can see that damage on the Stitcher was no joke. I mean, these guys, the characters are doing exceptional amounts of damage to this team. I mean, this is a team with high health because they were one of the higher health teams in the game. So they are getting ripped apart pretty quickly, and it winds up not being really even close. So this is just one of the teams they can beat. I think that they actually can beat a lot more than that. So teams that I tested on them and had some success on were Web Warriors, additional comps of teams that are a little bit that could put out early debuffs, and then they can recover from them as long as you can get to a target like some of the new warrior comps. Again, the problem we have is we're kind of in this war scenario where not every new warrior team is the same. You know, if you have Emma on there, it changes the outcome by quite a bit. Eternals, it's interesting depending on like punching across some of the Eternal comps if they don't have Emma or ways to speed them up. I don't recommend it. I have heard people say they've gotten it. I don't think it's reliable enough to try. If you do get behind in war, as long as you know that you don't have any of like the Lokis, the Cables, or the Emmas to speed them up, and you have nothing else, you may want to try it. But I think it's a exceptional thing that happens on such a rarity that I don't recommend it at all. Because again, they're gonna take all, even though you're taking all those buffs off of them, you may not survive the speed up and the speed down and the flip the first time to make it happen, and you have to not summon with Yondu to do it, and it's kind of a complicated mess. And it's, again, you know, when I give you war counters, I want them to be reliable. They have to work more than 20% of the time. More importantly, I consider it a hard counter if it's more than 10% of the time. There's no real element of ruin. So this team does take a lot of the newer, like the Web Warriors are hard countered by these. Any team that has slow, you can take on Doom teams. It does, they do counter Doom even with early energy, because you get the rewinds in there. So there's a lot of different teams that these guys can beat. They do work okay against Mercs. I do find that there are some Merc comps out there to be wary of, but again, these have all the tools to get the disrupt on your protectors and build from there. So there are quite a few teams that they build. So they beat. Where do they fit in the meta? I don't know that you should build them. Again, we're talking about a lot of T4s. We're talking about a lot of ISOs, and so this is my ISOs. They're going to get locked in right now. Yondu's a striker. Because of Ravager Bruiser's importance for landing that debuff, we're going to keep him at a focus. Without that focus, I don't know that he's doing that reliably against targets with defense up. So even with offense up on spawn, I do think that I would rather him a skirmisher. His striker ability doesn't get me that much going because, again, you want it'll work once, and it's all it needs to do, and then he can just go on his merry way and fly out of a vacuum sealed door lock for all I care. But obviously these guys are doing it. Boomer is definitely a skirmisher because of the assist, the striker combo, the double taps, the slows, the extra damage that these characters have. So we talked about Cha-Cha's striker skirmisher. I do think it's important to note that the more powerful he becomes, the more this team gets really kicking and can do a lot more on the table here. And they actually can really potentially start punching up in great regard. And then Stitcher, surprisingly, as a striker, this ability is nearly completely copied from his what's called the safety is the counter / ISO attack is going to be very similar to that, and it's a ton of piercing and the chance to make sure they don't come back, and kind of a big deal. So Ravagers, a lot of tech characters. I know that some people have used them in the raid. They're kind of a, if you're doing tech by committee, you've got a couple more tech characters that work inside the raid. I haven't found them to be phenomenally survivable, where I'm going to recommend that this team is your raid team. I do think there's some argument for Stitcher at his overall value to DD 5, but that's because you're sacrificing your characters because of his cost, so you're not bringing a character that's as valuable to the components. And I do think that they're going to be kind of like where Supernatural was for a long time to come. A lot of control elements, a lot of ways to kind of steal buffs. And so if you like Supernatural as a war team, you're going to like the Ravagers. And that's my final take. And remember, I do things so you don't have to. And yeah, a lot of T4s, a lot of value in them. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.